Greater Good Radio. Connect, learn, heal, and grow.
We take KGMB, and they were both in a nosedive in 3.5 years, and we turn them around. In fact, the KHON, not once but twice, we won the best Fox affiliate in the country. They flew me back to Punta Mita to give me the trophies. And KGMB, we took out of its insolvency, and then 3.5 years into it, MS decides to sell all their TV stations, 16. And that's when the FCC, because we were able to extend, I went back and met with Senator Inoue a couple of times, extend waivers on the illegal duopoly without having to divest of KGMB. But when Emma said they were going to sell the stations, the first order of business from the FCC was you're going to have to sell them to two separate parties. In fact, ironically enough, in the 16 stations they sold, the KHON went in the first 4. It was that strong because we had not only affiliation, but we had raised the profitability. And the one thing that they met with me initially, they couldn't get done, we did, and we did the same thing with KGMB. And that's when I met Scott, and the news operation didn't even have a morning news.
I was with you when you said we're going to start morning news.
Yeah. And Scott Humber was the major architect on that. That was in 2007. But by that time, we had already beaten Joe Moore, which everybody couldn't believe, at the 10 o'clock news on KGMB, and so we were doing some really cool things in the market. So anyway, fast forward, we get through that, and then I don't want to work for the guys at buy KHON, and I walk out because even though they said all these nice things, they got me behind a closed room, and they said, look, we paid through the nose for the station, and we want you to lay off 34 people. And I said, I could do that, but I won't do that. So I walked out, and all my managers walked out. And then they tried to stop the bleeding on that, and that became its own drama. But I was going to just walk away from MS. I was upset with them. But they had me on the contract, and they told me I had to go over to KGMB or they were going to sue me for breach of contract. And not only that, they were going to be very aggressive about it because they claimed if I jeopardized this deal in KHON, I mean, this would have had a lot of zeros. And I was in no mood to take on a lawsuit like that. It was one thing for me to be principled to walk out of KHON, which they were really worried I was going to blow the whole deal by doing that. And they were going to come for that. But if I refused to work for them at KGMB, it got kind of ugly.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't want the brain damage, and I really had no way to go. I was in Hawaii at that time. I was like, okay, I'll go and help the sale of KGMB. And, there's a lot of good people in KGMB. I'd gotten to know them. And all of a sudden, I had gone from running a big group and all those dynamics, 4 years earlier, to having the headaches of running the 2 stations. And then suddenly KGMB, they didn't change my pay. And I thought, okay, and then help lead the sale. In fact, actually tried to buy KGMB. But as a single station, we just couldn't make the numbers pencil out. Mm-hmm. In fact, originally, Jeff Smulyan, this is really ironic, had put the sale of the station at $30 million, which they couldn't get. We put together a thing to buy it, but we had improved the station so much, he upped the ante to 35. And then I convinced a bunch of guys, just took some time, now this took a couple of years, that we could hit the 35 because we increased our profitability at Cage, and he upped the price to 40. And that was a bridge too far. Actually, quite honestly, the highest we should have paid was $27 million, but I was pushing these guys into this deal, local investors and stuff. Station ended up going for $42 million. It sold for $40 million in cash, and $2 million they left on the table for receivables, which was unbelievable. Anyway, so from a company called MCG, they were private equity guys in Washington, and they were buying us, telling us we were going to be the flagship, and they were going to buy all these other stations. That didn't last very long, and long story short, that ended up being what then 2008 hit. That was in 2007. The recession that brought everybody to their knees. Yeah. Our cash flow dropped substantially. At least we were still in the black. KHON was way down. And so that's what the guys from MCG Capital went to Raycom, who owned KHNL and K5, and they saw a way to make the deal. So there was a serendipity in them buying it, even though they didn't know what the hell they were doing. They were clever enough to see the loophole with the FCC. And that's actually what we did. It had to do with exchanging intellectual property. It was a pretty sophisticated deal, and not anything you really want to talk in detail in this session. But that ended up becoming the then creation, this merged entity that we decided to call Hawaii News Now in 2009. They came, and so we did that, and we had to lay a lot of people off. We had 198 employees. I had to get it down to 30, so we let 60 people go. in order to consolidate. I try to keep it, even though we had the better team at KGMB. I want to take everybody. I couldn't quite do that, but we brought our news operation over, almost entirely. We brought our sales office over. Some of the other people, backroom stuff, where the redundancy was, like we kept the people in their business office and so on and so forth. We went through that. Then we turned that into an incredible success.
If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.